Average differences do not mean absolute differences. Of course, there are going to be women that are perfect engineers, that are really great and very logical and wonderful at problem solving. Of course. And there are also a lot of men that are incredible at hairstyling, right? That's totally fair. And I think that what is so beautiful about women is how adaptable we are. Like women, we really can adapt to different circumstances. So if we're in a circumstance where STEM is what's being pushed in our world, and we're going to become great at STEM. And then maybe, yeah, there's a percentage of women that are really passionate about different STEM careers and should pursue them. Absolutely. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Ancient Intelligence. You've got your host, Anya Shack here. And today we are at episode 80. And I thought it'd be fun to gather some of the questions that I've been seeing come through and do a Q&A for today. So I'm excited to jump into it. This is exciting and fun. Thinking about 80 today made me think of 100, which is coming in a few months. And I'm thinking about doing another Q&A for 100, making it a bit longer. So feel free to leave your questions and I'll gather them up and do that. So let's jump into it. Number one, what's your take on Stoicism? Is there a place or levels for it in men and women? How does it interfere with intimacy and authenticity? What's your perspective? Interesting. So Stoicism, I think as a general rule and idea is a wonderful thing, and I think is highly applicable from both men and women from the standpoint of, it's really not about what happens to you. It's about your response to everything that happens to you. So like being able to control your response, I think that is a good thing. And it's a thing that I think more people should incorporate in their lives just in general, regardless of sex. But it does, pull men towards it, right? It pulls men because I think there is this idea of a very effective method of controlling emotions before they get too big where they take over. And I think that's just foundationally against how women think about emotions, right? When we want to express our emotions, it's kind of how we talk, it's our language. And so it's just a little bit different. I like women just don't gravitate towards that, right? And then I feel like, yeah, men gravitate towards Stoicism the same way they gravitate towards, the Roman Empire and information and history about all of that. There's just some sort of focus on some core male values, integrity, honor, discipline. I think the discipline part is really a big portion of why men gravitate towards it so much. And I also think it just kind of goes hand in hand with asceticism. I was recently having a conversation with my Greek Orthodox friend, and we were talking about how many men in the last couple of years have joined her parish. And just so many young men are coming into this community because of the focus on asceticism, right? The focus on this discipline and this kind of giving up your earthly desires for this greater spiritual good and virtue, which is such a wonderful thing. And it's something that I think is needed, especially now in this day and age when there's so much distraction and so much difficulty. I think there's something to be said about how, the narrative has been really derogatory towards men the last couple of decades, has kind of made men feel down and out. And one thing I know about men is when you make men feel down and out, they will show up down and out. And so when you lift up men, you make men feel good and capable and needed, things change, but we haven't been doing that in our society. And so a lot more men than women have been falling into these kind of addictive patterns and kind of stepping away from society and just falling through the cracks. And there's so many societal implications and reasons for all of that, but which is why it's almost more important to men to get into those types of communities, right? It draws men to them in a way that it doesn't draw women. Because women have still been able to maintain their communities and their friendships. And there's just been so much female empowerment and positivity around women in a way that hasn't been true for men, which is the thing that I'm like fighting against. Like we can love women and support women, and we can support men. So Stoicism is a great way for men to kind of find their elevated selves, right? And also asceticism as well, if they're thinking of course, taking a more spiritual or religious path, which is also a great idea. But yeah, so that's how I guess what's my take? Yeah, it just attracts men. It just attracts men, and I think it when it comes to intimacy, that was part of the question too. Yeah, I think that's really attractive. I mean, for women, right? I think it's really attractive when you see a man like focused on those values of wisdom and courage and discipline. And thinking of asceticism, it's very attractive to think of a man not dabbling in all kinds of things like video games and porn and all the things that are coming at him at all times, but he's devoting himself to this higher virtue. Extremely attractive, right? I think it's only a plus for intimacy, right? It's a positive thing. And yeah, I think that's it's kind of that question. So, what do you think of prenups? And how should a person react if their partner refuses to get one? Interesting. I'm not married yet, so I don't know that much about prenups, but I'll share my like 2 cents on what I think, like what comes to me. I think prenups make sense to me in like not normal scenarios, right? In a scenario where, you have a football star marrying a like a barista, right? That like I understand that. I really understand a prenup in that kind of circumstance, right? I'm thinking of like Cristiano Ronaldo and his girlfriend, who they are not married yet. And actually, I believe that there's probably a reason that they're not married yet, even though they have 5 kids. And it has something to do with the implications of legal money, what that means for their very abnormal life circumstance based on like how they met. I feel like if two people meet and one person is kind of like just their difference in their financial state, right, is so vastly different that it's kind of an abnormal situation. It makes sense to get a prenup. But I think if people are generally, coming from a similar class structure, a similar status, a similar kind of place, I don't know. I would say no. I think this question also speaks to the level of distrust that we have these days, right? Between men and women, and just how bad things have gotten in regards to trust. And so it's just unfortunate that this is a consideration for so many people. If you're already going into it, and again, you're not in one of these abnormal Cristiano Ronaldo circumstances, then there's a conversation to be had about like what is the trust level here, and if I don't have it, then should I be marrying this person anyway? That's kind of how I feel about that. So this next question, is it important as a woman to learn how to turn off my masculine energy and turn on my feminine energy at home? I struggle with this. This is a big one. This is a big one. Women in our circles and women's circles, we talk about this all the time. I think what's really interesting about this question is that like there's this idea that feminine energy means just like, oh, I'm just relaxing on a couch and I'm eating grapes and I'm just being in this like very demure space and I'm not doing anything. Whereas in order to be doing anything, I need my masculine energy. And I just don't think that's true at all. I think a lot of times when we talk about this whole like masculine energy, like get things done, go to work, and then feminine energy, soft and demure and sweet and all of that. It's kind of drawing from the 1950s dynamic, where in reality, men and women have been co-creating and co-partnering and working together for thousands and thousands of years. There's never been a scenario in life where a woman has like not done anything, especially in a middle or lower class scenario, right? What happens is, I think there's a distrust of the masculine, right? There's a distrust that he will do what he's got to do, or there's this idea that like you have to, as a woman, you have to be always on, and you have to kind of, what's that word where you over you're overbearing. What's that word? I'm like trying to think of that word. Micromanage. You micromanage. I think that's a big thing that happens when women are at work all day and they're on and doing their things, and then they come home and they can't turn it off. It's not because they can't turn that part off. It's more because there's a lack of respect and appreciation and honoring for like the role that their partner is playing and all that he does. And so she tries to micromanage. It's that really causes a rift in relationship, right? It's not that she's doing life and doing things and getting things done and making things happen. It's more that she is trying to tell him how to do life. That's what doesn't work. That's what keeps her stuck in her masculine. She can very much still be a feminine woman and do the things that she loves and is passionate about, and be focused on her work that she loves, right? Be focused on kids, be focused on friends, and doing the things, the home, right? It's when she tries to insert herself as like the leader, right? That's when it doesn't work. So hopefully that's a good kind of start for that one. Okay. What are the top differences between men and women that cause the most problems? Oh man, that's a really big one. I'm going to answer this kind of quickly because I talk about this kind of stuff all the time. I guess the first one that comes to mind is diffuse versus focused awareness, right? Men are singular focused. That means that they do one task really, really intensely, then they need a rest, then they get into the next task really, really intensely. Whereas women, we have more of a ambient, always on kind of, we process information in the background while like we're available to other inputs. This is called diffuse focus. And so wanting to this has us seeing life completely differently than a man would see it, right? For us, we would say, like, why didn't you just take out the trash on your way to work? And for him, it was like, well, I take trash out on those days and I was on my way to work. That was my task. I was going to work. So, like, I didn't see the trash. And then for a woman, it's like, well, how could you not see it? It was right there. And then you realize, like, he's in his task tunnel and she's in her ambient, I see it all kind of like space, right? And it's just a really interesting, different way of seeing the world. And so that can cause a lot of problems if you don't understand that, right? And then I'd say, bonding differences, right? I think that um, this goes back to how, when babies are born, mothers, of course, are just intimately connected to this infant, and to the point where mothers feel like even once the baby's born, I've heard moms talk about how they still feel like the baby is like not separate from their body for a year or two. And that's just a really insane, impactful bonding that happens through oxytocin for women, right? And while men, of course, need that cuddling hormone and that like love hormone, they really bond more when it comes to vasopressin, which is kind of like the stress and struggle hormone, which is why dads bond with their kids a little bit later, like as the kids get a little older, when they can like the kid's like he's showing him how to ride a bike, or and then he scabs his knee and then dad's there to help him, and it's more of that kind of bonding and like showing them how to do things, showing them that they can do things. And this is so true when it comes to friendships, right? Like women in our friendships, it's all about connection and closeness. And can you sense where I'm at? And we're always talking. Whereas for men, it's like, we were on a sports team 25 years ago, and we don't talk that much, but because we went through that struggle together, like we're bonded for life as bros, right? So it's really interesting. And then finally, I think like just the difference in needs is a big difference. Just the general difference in need. It's like men just really need they just really need respect, right? They just really need to be respected and honored for their abilities and their character and how they do life and what they do and what they bring to the table. Um, and women just really need connection, right? We just really need um, that constant kind of connection. I just want to make sure that we're still connected, at all times. And so there's like a Russian rap song that I love. Actually obsessed with this artist named Ja Khalib. He's my favorite. He's from Kazakhstan, but he's also like, I think he has someone who's from Azerbaijan. So I just adore him. And he has this song where he's talking about like, he always talks about men and women in his music, which I love. And like she said something about like I want you to always be near me. And he said, that doesn't matter. Like, I want you to just always be with me, right? The idea was like, she was like, just, always be around. And he was like, no, I just want you to be loyal, right? And I think women sometimes forget that men are so loyal that they're like, even when they're far away, even when they go on a trip, even when you don't see them for a while, like they're still loyal. They've committed to something, and that's not going anywhere. Whereas for women, we get scared because women are a little more fickle just with each other. So it's just a little, you want to like be in close contact because you're just hoping that she's still committed to you as a female friend, right? And so that kind of dichotomy can always be a little bit difficult. So just really understanding that like when men say they're going to do something, they're going to do it. Whereas when with women, like women just need a little more attention, just a little more touch base. Actually, Alison Armstrong, my favorite mentor, she talks about how this couple that she's known for years and years and years, they're like in their 50s, and he's still to this day, after being married for like 25 years, he still to this day had in his phone on his like calendar basically like text wife 3 p.m. right, just as a reminder because he gets into it and he gets busy, right, and it's just a reminder like, oh yeah, she needs that little touch base. That's all she needs, right? Like she just needs a little touch base. I might not need that as a man, but she does. And so I think that's really important to kind of understand each other's needs and help out in that way. This question here. Do you have a cutoff age for a man you're willing to date? Um, yeah, I'd say probably 45. It's probably a good cutoff for me. I'm in my early mid 30s, so 45. Um, I'm gonna be 35 this year. Yee! So yeah, that makes sense. My birthday's in May. So yeah. How much should I change to try and find a woman? Let's see here. How much should I change to try and find a woman? I would say, as a man, you don't need to change who you are at all. Like, at all. I would say the only change is really about elevating, right? Like Jordan Peterson style, like Stoic style. Like, if you're not happy, there's you feel like you're not contributing. You feel like you're just like meh, you're not fulfilled, you're not really living the life that you deep down want to be living. That's where you elevate, right? But it's for you, it's not for a woman. You elevate and then you recognize how much more attractive you become to a woman. But you don't change to find a woman. I have a really fun story actually about this. I was in a relationship workshop with who was the Rodrigo. Oh, I'm missing his last name. Anyway, he's a great relationship coach out in LA, and he was talking about how um, him and his girlfriend at the time they moved to a new city and they like met a couple of people, some family friends, etc., and they were hanging out and they were talking. It was like multiple couples, like 4 or 5 couples. And it was like a Saturday or something. And then they all started to get along and it was really great. And then one of the women was like, oh, you guys should start coming with us to Sunday fun days. We do Sundays, we do family, we do this and that. And then his girlfriend said, oh, I'm sorry, we're actually busy Sundays. Um, my man Rodrigo, he plays soccer all day every Sunday, and so I spend the day at the soccer field, like watching him play soccer. And everyone was like, "What?" And the guys especially were like, "How are you able to play soccer every Sunday all day? Like that's crazy. How does she let you get away with that?" And he was just like, right away started talking about how this is the paradigm issue. This is the paradigm shift that people don't really understand. Like, oh, I just, the idea of like being let or not let to do something is just so antithetical to harmony and relationship and trust and love. And so he talks about how when she met him, he had been playing soccer every Sunday, and that was the thing that he did no matter what. And he kept doing it there throughout all the first months that they were dating. And so it became very clear to her that like this is who he is. If I want to be with him, great. I'm gonna have to take the Sunday soccers along with it. If I don't, then I get to bow out gracefully. What ends up happening though is men sometimes will give up what they're doing. They'll be like, oh, well, I just met this great girl and I want to really devote my energy to her. I'm going to skip soccer. And then I'm going to skip soccer again. And then I'll skip that. And then I'll skip that. And then 6 months down the line, you say, hey, I'm going to go play soccer all day on Sunday. And she says, what do you mean? You play soccer on Sundays? And then it's this big surprise. That's when it doesn't work, right? That's when women get a little frustrated. But when you are you from the first moment you meet her, till all the way through, that's what works, right? Like she gets to either say yes or no. Like you get to set up who you are and invite her into that. Whatever those boundaries are, whatever those guardrails are, right? That's really, really attractive, you know? So that's my answer to that one. Do you believe in long distance relationships? I do. I actually really, really do. If people are looking for something real and they're looking to build partnership, create a family, and they're serious, and especially now, like in our in the 30s and 40s, like people are, meeting each other a little bit older these days in modern society. But I actually really believe that it works great because then you can really get to know this person in a deep way without like having that physical whatever anxiety come up because a lot of us have attachment issues, a lot of us have trauma, a lot of us have issues, right? So we can kind of get to know a person for who they are in their mind, their soul, like get to know who they are, talk about compatibility, talk about the important things before the physical aspect because then it might not be a match, right? Based on compatibility. And so I think it's really great actually to for things to start out that way. Some of my favorite couples that I know started long distance and then they came together 6 to 9 months later. So interesting. All right, here's the next one. In my work, we have many women who are developers and IT consultants. I believe some women are very logical and good at problem solving. Maybe men and women are not actually different in how they see the world. Yeah, that's totally fair. Are you asking, are men and women different? Like, are women that are consultants and IT developers the same as men and logical? Listen, I think Louise Perry said this. Average differences do not mean absolute differences. Of course, there are going to be women that are perfect engineers, that are really great and very logical and wonderful at problem solving. Of course, right? And there are also a lot of men that are incredible at hairstyling, right? And just, you know, whatever, take some female trope and put it there. Of course, that's totally fair. Um, And I think that what is so beautiful about women is how adaptable we are. Like women, we really can adapt to different circumstances. So if we're in a circumstance where, STEM is what's being pushed in our world, and we're going to become great at STEM. And then maybe, yeah, there's a percentage of women that are really passionate about different STEM careers and should pursue them. Absolutely. I would just say that we have such a hard time with a holistic approach. We'll say things, well, she's an amazing IT consultant. She's great, right? Like that means she's great. She's one life. Well, we've got to ask, right? What about the other aspects of her life? Is she so over-indexed on logic and problem solving that she's cut herself off from her feminine aspects, right? How's her sex life? How's her romance? Does she want to be a mom? How's her sensuality? How does her health? How's her body? How does she feel? Does she feel sexy? Does she feel like in tune with the world, right? Is she proving herself? There's a lot of really important questions that we get to ask. And I feel that in the West, sometimes we're so specific always. We're always so focused on one variable, we forget about the holistic approach. So that's kind of what I would say to you. That may be wonderful, and maybe she is so happy in her femininity and she's logical and good at problem solving and way to go, like cheering for her as an engineer, but maybe not. And that's when we get to understand what's really deeper than that, right? Is she just over indexing because she feels like she needs to be really good at this and then letting the rest of her life kind of fall by the wayside or not? Maybe this is she's one of the exceptions, right? She's a female engineer and she loves it. That's great. So, yeah, average differences are not absolute differences ever, ever, ever. So if something is not landing, then that's okay. We're all probably outliers in different ways. All of us, right? It's still worthwhile to talk about average sex differences because it helps the most number of people. I think it's important. Do you think society does a good job teaching women how to attract and hold on to good men? I do not. I really do not, and I'll try to make this one short. Finish up on this one. Let me see if is there one more. Um, we'll finish up on this one. So I don't. I think that's because everyone wants like a ready-made partner. It's almost like everyone wants to meet someone that is just perfect and the cake has been baked, right? As opposed to meeting someone where when they're on their come up, I think women have a really hard time understanding, especially that one of the greatest drivers for a man to succeed and do well in life is a woman and her love and her support and her devotion to him, right? And then creating a family with him and realizing he's responsible for that. And that becomes a great driver for him to achieve things that he never thought possible before. And I think women forget that, and women aren't really taught that um, because in this like ridiculous thing that we do in the West, where like we can only uplift one thing because we have to put down the other thing, and or it has to switch. We can't like hold two things true at one time, which is that you know women are wonderful and men are wonderful and they need different things, but they also need each other to be most fulfilled in life. They need each other. So I think that, yeah, I think women are not being taught what to really look for. I think there's a real big conversation going on about sexuality and the like chaos that has ensued from sexuality being severed from long-term partnership and marriage. Um, it's just like done women and men such a disservice. It's ridiculous. I want to do a whole episode on this because how many men have just like said to me, I don't want it where I don't want it. I don't want to open my phone and suddenly all I see is T and A and I didn't even want that. I'm just trying to look at cars or whatever. And it's it's obscene, really. It's obscene. Sometimes I like take walks down the trail here in Dallas and I'm just like I'm looking around and I'm like, man, if a man from 100 years ago just like time traveled and made his way and was walking along beside me on this trail, he would say something like, everyone is wearing their underwear right now. This is crazy. And by underwear, I mean the little sports bras and the little shorts and it's crazy. It's crazy. So the answer is no. And so I think we need to have a lot of like come to Jesus moments about what works and what does not work in our society. So there we go. That's all for this Q&A. Until the next one. If you found value in what I'm doing here, please help me grow the podcast. And you can do one of two things. Either share the episode with a friend or leave me a review on Spotify or Apple. This will help me so much. Until next time.